Anyway, so,
Before we
yeah,
start,
yeah,
can I say another thing?
yeah.
The Asbury Revival has been shut down, not because of lack of participation, but because the town of Wilmore is not set up to handle that much traffic and that influx of people. Their infrastructure won't take it, their roads won't take it, their highways won't take it. In fact, a day or two ago, they had to set up bypasses. The state police did, I guess the troopers, set up the bypass in Wilmore, just so traffic could get around, because there were so many people coming. But they said it's going to start in other areas in central Kentucky on the 21st, going to restart. And the services for the teens, high schoolers, and college students will continue till the 28th. But they still have hordes of people wanting to get in. But I read another article that said, is this real or not? You know, said the second...
It was real or real there.
Yeah, but the second Reformation, when they had the, what revival was that? Azusa revival? Said that resulted in positive change. You know, it's not just an inward thing, but Christ expects us to go outward. And he said, and if this revival does that, if it spreads outward and results in people being won for Christ and people being witnessed to and you know, actual things happening, then it will be real. But right now, they said it's too early to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly done good, you know, to the extent that it's, whatever extent it is, I think is yet to be determined. And they, you know, it's like Gamaliel told I guess it was the Sanhedrin, when they was talking about the new followers of Christ movement that was around then, said his advice was just to leave this alone. If this is not of God, it's going to fizzle out. If it is of God, then nobody can stop it. And if this is of God, and there's not any question that people have been helped by it. And, you know, yeah, so
He said that this author said the inward feeling is good for you, but unless you transfer it into something tangible, then it doesn't do anybody else.
well, that's right, but it has to start with you, you know.
He's
So
not saying it was wrong.
right, yeah,
He's just saying let's wait and see if there are results from it.
yeah. It's done a lot of good for a lot of people already, but it could be, you know, I still think that this could be a significant turning point in the nation's history, and there's just not anybody that can redirect traffic around it. You know, if it's
But it all depends on what we that have been there do with it.
yeah, yeah.
If as many people as possible from our church go to camp meeting.
Yeah.
That's the second full week of July. Anyway, the 9th through the 6th starts on July the 19th, the 9th, and goes to the 16th. And I tell you, there's been some really good times of big years. And good people to go for that.
What dates is district conference?
District conference is going to be the 27th. If they started on a Thursday, it would be the 27th
Which month?
of July.
Of July, okay. All right. So let me ask you this question. What if somebody told you that they were really seeking a pure religion? What would you tell them? Okay,
I would say there's no religion.
okay. Anyone else? Somebody comes to you and says, I'm really seeking a pure religion. What would you tell them? Serving Christ. Anyone else?
To me, they're seeking something they're not sure what to call it, but at the same time, maybe they've never had any experience with an area to really understand what true religion is. And we would just, I don't think it's anything that's negative on their part, it's just that they want to see, want to know what it is.
Okay. Anybody else? Answer. What would you say to someone that comes to you saying that they are seeking pure religion? Okay.
Yeah, and I would go on after I said there is no pure religion, I'd go on and explain to them about Christianity and Christ, His forgiveness, His repentance, the entire thing.
So I want to put this question on hold for a second. Forget just for a minute that we asked that question, and let's go to another one. We hear people talk about liberal churches and conservative churches. How do you define the difference between a liberal church and a conservative church?
To me, the liberal church is one that has allowed the world to be. They adopted the world's ideas. They're almost nationalists, Christian nationalism. A conservative church is one that has stuck more closely to the Bible, has tried not to let the world in.
Okay.
Well, one thing with the liberal, everything that's going on in the world right now is supposed to be right. No matter what it is. The transgender thing and all the things like that. We're just supposed to accept that as it's okay. If you're on the liberal side. The conservative side reads the Bible and knows that it's a sin.
Okay. Have you noticed that people who are liberal-minded and people who are conservative-minded, they follow that pretty much down the line there in every aspect of their life? It seems that it almost has something to do with which side of the brain they're thinking with, doesn't it? If you're either way on this, you have trouble understanding those who think differently. Anybody else want to take a shot at what's the difference between a liberal church and a conservative church?
Different kinds of churches. I think there's the super conservative that we probably grew up more in, and then there's the contemporary church who's a little bit more open-minded, but I think the liberal has maybe become something different. It's not good. It's taking on ideas that are worldly.
So I'm gonna kind of offer an explanation of this, and this is kind of my own invention. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you that it's right, but I've given a lot of thought to this idea of liberal versus conservative in the church world as well as in the government world. We have government politicians that are liberal, politicians that are conservative, and a few years back, the politicians who were liberal, and by the way, the churches who were liberal, have discovered that that's kind of a negative word. They don't really want to be called that anymore, and so both the liberals of the church and the liberals in government have changed that word to progressive. And myself, I'm not participating in that. I'm not going to let them just change their name and to make it more popular when it's the same thing. But let me offer this explanation. I think that people who are conservative have a tendency to follow the the governing documents of whatever it is that we're talking about. So if it's a conservative Christian that we're talking about, then the governing document would be the Bible. If it's a conservative politician we're talking about, then the governing document would be the Constitution. So I think that what happens is that conservative people tend to stick with the governing document of whichever it is that we're talking about. And the liberal people look for, they would probably say that both documents serve as more of a guideline than a real way of doing things. You know, some people look at the Constitution as just a general guideline and not really something to be stuck with. And some people look at the Bible as just a guideline and not really something to be stuck with. But there's still, there is, as best as I can see it, I think that that's probably the division there. It has to do with how you view, you know, like I'm a conservative in both arenas, both in political thought and in Christian thought. And so I like politicians who are faithful to the Constitution, and I like preachers and teachers and in schools and churches that are governed by the Scriptures. So to me, that kind of is the thing that divides the two. Now, I'll give you a chance to comment on that, your thoughts about whether or not that's a fair way to divide them up.
I think it's a fair way. However, I also think that you didn't mention that just using the Bible as a guideline is wrong.
Well, no, I mean as a rule of life is what I'm talking about.
But even the Bible, you said the Constitution is just a guideline, and the Bible is just a guideline.
That's the liberal view,
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So yes. Anybody else? A thought on it? Okay. With that in mind, now what I want to do is show that in the Scriptures we see sort of both of these things showing up. But we look first to James chapter 1, verse 27, where we're going to see what pure religion really is. Okay. That's my fault. I told you 17, didn't I? I think I did. There we go. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. So you see both there. Both. There are two areas there that we hardly ever see anybody doing both very well. So you keep yourself unspotted from the world, but you also visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. So what we see, if we're honest, church, is this: we find churches out there who are really good at visiting the widows and the fatherless in their distress, taking care of the needy. We find churches out there that are really good at that. And we find churches out there that are really good at keeping themselves unspotted from the world. But we don't find very many churches that's good at both. The more conservative churches do a really good job at keeping themselves unspotted from the world. The more liberal churches do a really good job at looking after the widows and the fatherless. It's hard to find both, but pure religion does both. Pure religion does both. Now, that's our guide, you know. This is our guide. This is how we know what pure religion is. You want to have a life that's pure, and you want to have a pure religion in your life. Both are there. Both. To look after the widows and the fatherless in their distress, and to keep yourself unspotted from the world. That's pure religion. You see half of it in the more liberal churches, and you see the other half in the more conservative churches. But it's hard to find both. It really is. Comments? So now we know what pure religion looks like. Now, this is a good test for us. And I think that if I stand up here week after week and I don't challenge you, I'm not doing you any good. I'm not doing my job. I'm not helping you any. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. As you reflect on these two things, how are you doing at keeping yourself unspotted from the world? Just reflect on that for a minute or two. How good are you doing at keeping yourself unspotted from the world? And then as you're reflecting on that, ask yourself, how good are you doing at looking after the widows and the fatherless in their affliction? How good are you doing at looking after the widows and the fatherless in their affliction?
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
How can we do that?
How can we do that?
And the fatherless, actually. I mean, I don't know any children that are fatherless right now. I mean, there are a lot out there, I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Well, yeah, I mean, Salvation Army's, they're one such place that's that way. The Gathering is another place that looks after the widows and the fatherless. There are several other agencies, several other organizations in town that does this, but
Okay, so you're not saying for us to individually go out and do it?
no, I think we need to plug into places that's being done. I mean, I can't do much myself, but I can plug into somebody else that's doing it, and I can be a real help to them. And I would say this too, Alan. I think that it's fairly easy for most of us to give something to these people. It's harder for us to get out there and meet them and do it. It's easier for us to give to the Salvation Army or to the Gathering or somebody like that that's doing a good job at looking after the needy. But you know what's really better is for us to actually get out there in the serving line, and volunteer to do whatever we can do to help them that way. It should be so that we do this. And the truth is, if I were to guess, I would say that all of us probably feel like we're doing a little bit better job of keeping ourselves unspotted from the world than we are looking after the widows and the fatherless. Because that's kind of the nature of a more conservative church, is that we tend to do that a little bit more. Anything else on that you'd like to mention, talk about? So now we want to switch over. Let's get over to John chapter 8.
Hang on. Mark
Yes.
wants to say something.
Yeah.
Question, what does unspotted mean? I mean, does that mean like it affects your life or how you're living for Christ? Does that mean it interferes with your life or you become attached to it? What does that mean, unspotted?
Well, what comes to my mind as you ask that is, where is the passage? It's probably in Revelation, where it talks about, let me see if I can find it here.
One thought on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It goes to Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, where it tells us not to be conformed to the world. It's talk about being spotted into the world. We're not supposed to be conformed to the world, but we're supposed to have a renewing of our minds.
Okay.
We're supposed to not be conformed to the world. Oh. Yeah, that's my thought.
Where am I trying to grab this phrase that's bouncing around in my head, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing?
A glorious church without spot.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm looking here. But well, we don't really have to look it up. That you have the idea, I think, that we're talking about now. So, in John chapter 8, beginning in the first verse, I'm going to read actually down through several verses here. Jesus went into the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And boy, he would probably not be well received here, would he? He sat down to teach. Isn't it funny how we get caught up in our own habits and traditions? And if I decided on Sunday morning that I was going to pull a stool up here and sit down, you all would think I was imitating some of these young preachers that preach now with blue jeans and their holes in their knees of their blue jeans and that group. You'd think that's what I was trying to be.
No, I think you were too old to stand up.
I can live with that. I can live with that, especially coming from an older man. I can live with that. So anyway, Jesus sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in his law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? Y'all remember the song, Neither Do I Condemn Thee? It was popular back in the 70s. I used to love that song. It was a cool song. So this is, verse 6 tells us exactly what I was going to say next. This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the dirt as though he heard them not. So first of all, imagine this woman, the absolute embarrassment that she has now. She's been brought by the scribes and Pharisees, and she's thrown down there in the middle of them, and they're saying, Jesus, this is Moses and his law says that this should be stoned. What do you say? This woman's taken in adultery. Question number one, where is the man here? That's a pretty good starting point. Is that, if she was taken in adultery, there was a man that probably should have been in there with her, but he wasn't. They did not apply the same standard there. This they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. So this wasn't really about her ever. This was always about trying to trap Jesus. That's what it was always about. And Jesus kind of had a pretty cool way of handling this. He stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. He was totally ignoring them. He was purposely and even kind of in your face ignoring them. He stoops down, he writes on the ground as if he didn't even hear them. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto him, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Well, this is really, I love the Lord's way of handling this stuff. He stoops down, he's writing on the ground, he acts like he's not even hearing them. And when they presses him, he just stands up long enough to say, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And then he goes back to his business of ignoring them again. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, and here is, in this sentence, he addresses both the conservatives and the liberals. He said, Neither do I condemn thee. The liberals love that one. Go and sin no more. The conservatives love that one. But pure religion involves both. He said, Neither do I condemn thee, but go and sin no more. Now, the liberals want to hear that, neither do I condemn thee, because they want to do whatever they want to do without condemnation from anybody. And when he says go and sin no more, that's a part that they're not too fond of. This is again sort of a test of our pure religion, because both of these things were necessary. Both of these things that Jesus said was necessary. He showed her mercy. Neither do I condemn thee. But then you got to stop doing this. Go and sin no more. Any comments or questions about that? Well,
It's easy not to say, I don't condemn you either. And then go and sin no more. I mean, I'm not saying for Jesus, I'm saying for us.
mm-hmm.
The Bible says, either do I condemn you, either go and sin no more. But then when they ignore that and continually sin, it's awfully difficult not to condemn them.
If they are continually, intentionally sinning,
Yeah.
they got big problems. And it's our condemnation is the least of their problems.
But what, I guess what we're supposed to do is condemn the act, not the act.
I don't know. John the Baptist, he said to Herod about his brother's wife, he said to him, it's not lawful for you to have her. I mean, he didn't mince words about that. He was...
In fact, I don't think we should mince words.
No.
All these sins. I think we should let them know, but we don't have to condemn them for doing it.
Sure they are. That is the sinner's favorite verse. Judge not, lest ye be judged. But that's another lesson. But that's one of the most misunderstood verses in the Scripture. Well, anyone else have anything you'd like to add? We're going to go to prayer, and then we're going to go wherever it is we go after this. And it's I would appreciate your prayers. I'm still trying to get my sleep regulated. I am doing a little better than I was. I'm still staying sleepy and dozing off a lot, but it's better than it was. Sunday morning, Dad was at church here, and after church we went to eat, and he was going to drop me back off here at my car, and I almost fell asleep at the dinner table at the restaurant, and we started home, and I started back here, and I said, Dad, just take me home. I said, I'm afraid to drive. I mean, I was that sleepy, and so he took me out to the house, and I was going to have Parker bring me back to get my car, but another friend of mine was going out and took me down here. But I still need your prayer about that. And I want to tell you too, I want to just praise the Lord for answering prayer. I've got a short list of things that I pray about every night before I go to bed. It's a short list, but it's on one small piece of paper. But on that list, I've been praying for money to buy a simulator to train church security teams on for our Bible college, and since I've been praying for that, we've got up to $4,800 of the $16,000 that we need to buy it, and so I'm really thankful for how that's going. The Lord has answered that. That prayer is answering it. But I also prayed that the Lord would send us additional Bible students, and I just this week I've had 2 different people that I would never have dreamed in a million years was interested in it. Have contacted me about enrolling in the Bible college. One of them is a fireman over at Marietta, and he says that the Lord's called him into the ministry, and he wants to start classes right away. And the other one is a 71-year-old man that I used to work with on the sheriff's department, and he later retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons and has a farm out in Ritchie County, and I was just surprised that he was interested at all, but he called me up and wanted to know how I could go about attending Bible college. And so just prayer alone brought those two people to us. And I'm thankful for that, yeah. So what else do we need to pray for?
Continue praying for our neighbor Debbie. She's out of ICU, she's in Stephanie. Still really sick, but she's getting better. So, just continue praying for her. Also, I want to say what you think about your prayer list. Every night, I said before that I pray for my neighbors. And sometimes that's a hard thing for me to do, but I pray every night. Well, today I was talking to a couple of the neighbors, and the one said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "You go to church, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You didn't pray for me?" And I said, "Yeah, I pray for you every day." So I think something's going on. He said, "Why do you pray for me?" And I said, "I pray for everybody here." And I said, "I don't want anybody to go to hell. I want everybody to go and be saved." And he said, "Well, I read my Bible." And I said, "That's good." And I said, "But you need to get saved." And he said, "No, I'm not ready for that." I said, "No, God will keep praying for you." And he said, "Well, you've got a good heart." And he said, "I'm glad you go to church, and I'm glad you're happy." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "Just remember, I'm going to keep praying for you." So I'm glad you took my prayers.
It's good. Good to hear that.
My little nephew Brock has been sick for several days now, and I'm not sure they've done some tests and things like that, and we could just pray for him. I saw a picture of him, and I couldn't believe how bad he looks. And his mom is a nurse, and she's getting, every once in a while, the temperature goes up, and then it comes back down, and everything. So if you would just pray for Brock, we really appreciate it. And then Rick Dawson came through that surgery great.
Good.
And I'm just so thankful for that, and appreciate the people who did pray for my marriage.
Pray for the revival that's going on and that's
Yeah.
being, there's other revivals that are starting as well, not because this one closed, but because they went home and they told their people at church, and the churches are getting revived. And I pray that for our church as well, for this area, we need revival.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Anyone else? You've got one more Sunday at your last Sunday at your church. Pray for that church. Are they going to keep open? Do you know? They are.
They don't know, I'm not sure what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're meeting March 2nd.
Yeah. They probably want to appoint you as the interim pastor. Wouldn't that be broken-hearted? I mean, yeah. Well, let's pray for all concerned. This is a rough last days. The last days usually rough, and so it was for when I would leave a church. It was rough for some of them, and others were celebrating, dancing around the sanctuary. But let's stand together, and we'll let our almost unemployed pastor dismiss us with prayer.
We got to take this down. We just want to thank you.
I'd say that on the average, they should.